Hi there and welcome back to our PLCnext tutorial series. My name is Jonas and today I'm going to show you how to write a simple project for PLCnext in FourZero Studio. So if you haven't done it yet, please check out our first video of the tutorial series where I'm showing you how to get started with PLCnext, how to set up the firmware configuration and how to install the FourZero app from the PLCnext App Store. If you want to learn more about FourZero, learn how to program, learn how to get started, please follow our general programming videos about FourZero or check out the tutorials in our documentation. So let's get started with our PLCnext demo project now. As you've seen, I already opened or started FourZero Studio and I'm now creating just a new empty project and I'm gonna call that PLCnext demo. So you see we have an empty project, there are no devices, no application blocks, everything is starting from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm starting with creating a new application block. I'm calling that just my application block, and that's it. In FourZero you are free to start with creating application blocks, but you could also start creating your devices. Our users are free to choose however they want to start. So in my case I just want to have an application block that is just reading a Boolean input from some. Well, let's start the other way around. What I'm going to do here is I want to read a digital input from our PLCnext digital input module, and depending on the digital input I want to set an analog output to 0 or to 5 or to 10 volts. So what I'm going to do is at first my application block, it needs an input. So there I'm going to the toolbox and I'm selecting input. So we want to receive a Boolean input and we want to have an output of type real because our analog out values are submitted by the data type real. So what I'm going to do now is if my Boolean input is true, I want to send a value of 5 volts. If it's false, I want to send a value of 10 volts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to data, selection, and here we have the select function block. And I'm telling it that if you receive some event, so on event request, you check the selector. If the selector is true, we'll send out a value of type real and we want to send out 10 volts, 10.0. If my value is false, the F selector block is going to select input number 2 and there we want to select a value of data type real and we want to send 5 volts. So now we just have to connect the output values and the output events. So my application block is already fine now. We have a Boolean input and we send some real output. So let's go ahead and create a device. Let's say a new device is called PLCnext. And then we can go to the device properties and say that we have a PLCnext device. I also have to specify an IP address of course. So in our case this is 192.168.8.222 and we can select any deploy path. In my case I want to just put it into the My Projects folder on the PLCnext in case I have to change the project or check it out, I can find it in this folder on the PLCnext as well. So let's create a new app, like call it my app. And then as we are going to use the digital input and analog out modules, we also need to specify this according service provider. So you can either add a service provider by using the plus button down here, or you can go to Toolbox, Extensions, PLCnext, and then you can choose the digital IO and analog IO service provider. So what we are going to do is, or if you use the service providers, make sure that you specify the right consecutive number parameters. So in my case, this is the same setting that we have also seen in the first video from the PLCnext engineer. So you have to specify which position on the axial line bus your modules are located at. So in this case, we still have the PLCnext starter kit, which has the digital I/O module installed in the first place and the analog I/O module installed in the second place. So what we want to do is we want to read some digital input. In our case, we are just using pin number 0. And we want to write some analog output. In our case, we are going to write to pin number 0 as well, with the output range of 0 to 10 volts. And we're good to go. So if we're going to my app and we activate our service provider, then you see you have a digital input available and you have an analog output available. So we can now just download our application onto the PLCnext by dragging and dropping my application block, and of course connecting the lines. So this seems fine. So we got our inputs from physical inputs, in this case digital in number 0. We got an application block that receives this Boolean input. It selects between 10 and 5 as an output and sends this value to our analog output. So everything seems to be fine. So in this case, I can just create a new run environment and add our PLCnext to the run environment. And that's it. So we can start our app. It's asking me for username, which is admin, of course. And it's asking me for our password that you can find on your PLCnext. And as soon as I hit the OK button, it's starting to stop the old app. It's transferring the project files needed, and it is restarting our application. So now it's saying that our start is complete. So if we check out our device, we go to my app. I forgot to mention, as soon as we started an app, we get into the monitoring mode of our run environment, so we can now have a live view of our PLCnext application. So if we go in there, we see the triangle indicates that my app is running, and also this blinking light is indicating that my application block is running. So if we have a look at that and we watch all, then we see that we already received one input. That's the starting sequence, and we received the input of false, and it selected the first value, which is 10 volts. So I can guarantee you that I got a multimeter connected to my PLCnext next to me, and it's also showing 10 volts at the analog output. So if I now toggle the digital input 0, we see that we receive an event, and it's setting now our analog output to 5 volts. So that's basically it. Our basic app is running. We can monitor the app. We could also force values by using a value, for example, true, forcing a value of true, and then forcing an event. And we will also set the output to 5 volt. So I hope you liked the video, and I hope to see you again for the next tutorial videos. Bye!